Check 1, 2, check. Check 1, 2.
We'll get started in just a minute here, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hagerstown Community College's third annual Big Read event. My name is Alicia Drumgold, and I am the co-chair of the HCC Big Read Committee. Thank you all for coming. We have a big treat today. We have here with us author Chris Arnade, author of the book Dignity, Seeking Respect in Back Row America. Chris Arnade is a freelance writer and photographer whose work has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, The Guardian, The Washington Post, The Financial Times, and The Wall Street Journal, among many others. He has a PhD in physics from Johns Hopkins University and has worked for 20 years as a trader at an elite Wall Street bank before leaving in 2012 to document addiction in the Bronx. Please help me welcome Chris Arnade.
I told your president that I will do my best not to beg while talking, which probably not send a good message. But if I get a little bit nervous, it's because I'm without my bag. First of all, I want to say that I'm very honored to be here. I'm really honored that you chose my book. I get a lot of requests to speak, and often it's from places like Princeton and Harvard, and I now decline those. I much prefer talking to a school like this because what was in my book that I think students here have that much better kind of understanding. It explains to very well-educated people that people who are not as well-educated might have some value. It's a little bit harder to get across sometimes. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm going to go through this talk pretty quickly, and so I'm going to focus on. So who am I? That's me about 14 years ago. That was a lifestyle of a banker. I never expected to be that person. I grew up in a small town in the South. I didn't know what a bank was, didn't know what the difference between a bond and a stock was, but I was a bit of a math prodigy. I was good at numbers, and that took me, being good at numbers, took me out of my hometown into a PhD, and then onto Wall Street, where I sat around looking at numbers and making bets on them without really any understanding of what was behind those numbers or what were behind those bets, the humans involved in the numbers and the bets I was making. Sorry. So around 2011, 2012, I left Wall Street to focus on poverty and addiction in the Bronx. That why is probably the hardest, probably the most obvious question I get, and probably the hardest one for me to answer. I'm not really sure why I left. I'm not sure why I made the choices I made, but at the time, it felt like the right thing to do, the kind of moral thing to do, the good thing to do. I had become burned out on Wall Street. There was this, lurking sense that I'd got myself into a position where I didn't know why I was there, and I started looking around me and realizing I wasn't particularly happy I mean, I had money, I had a good life, but I wasn't necessarily I didn't feel fulfilled at a spiritual level, at a moral level. So I started going out on long walks. And during those long walks, I started noticing flocks of pigeons, beautiful flocks of pigeons above me, swirling. They were clearly choreographed. There was clearly something involved in them more than just flocks of pigeons. And I ended up finding out that there are people who keep pigeons. They're called pigeon keepers. It's an old sport. It was originally an Italian sport. It was brought over by the Italians to New York City. You can find it in the Bronx, which is what brought me to the Bronx. You can find it in Brooklyn. The most famous person who keeps pigeons is Mike Tyson. So if you know, it's a wonderful hobby. I consider it a form of art. And so I actually started going around New York City documenting pigeon keepers. And this is an example of a pigeon keeper. This is Slice. Slice did 30 years for a murder he committed when he was 17, drug deal gone bad. Like a lot of pigeon keepers, had a tough life. And I completely understood when I go up on the roof decks why they keep pigeons. You go up on the roof decks, as he said, I'm away from the problems down below. 6 floors up, he has his pigeons. It's his form of, Zen. The roof decks, they keep them on abandoned buildings. I also find guys who kept bikes. So in the Bronx. This is, if you're my age, you know what this is. This is a Schwinn bike. You used to buy these in the Sears catalog, okay? People like me literally throw these away. So this largely Puerto Rican, Hispanic guys find them and fix them up and turn them into works of art. They redo them. They turn them into kind of, pimp my Schwinn. And I also met kids flipping. This is Jose. I called him Jose the Amazing. He is a kid who was homeless, who I ended up becoming friends with in the Bronx. It was funny when I first met Jose. Hunts Point, the Bronx, is 99% Black and Hispanic, and as you can see, I'm neither of those. And so I'd be walking around through the Bronx with my camera. I kind of stuck out. There was this one day where Jose and his friends were walking down the street just throwing rocks at things. And I was walking towards them. And they saw me, and they started running. They just assumed I was a detective. And during the process of running, Jose did a flip over a fire hydrant. And I said, yo, dude, come back, that's amazing. So I ended up becoming a friend of his. I would spend Sundays with him. He would do these amazing aerial tricks for me, which I would try to document in photos. The first lesson I learned walking through the Bronx was, people make art out of things others throw away. Schwinn bicycles, pigeons. In my neighborhood where I lived in Brooklyn Heights, which is a well-to-do, rich neighborhood, pigeon keeping was illegal. They've outlawed it. I consider it a form of art, and so you started realizing there was a class thing here going on. That, what is considered a useless neighborhood actually has a lot of art in it. It's not necessarily what wealthy people consider art, but it's what I consider art. I think Jose flipping is art. I think this sort of graffiti is art. Hunts Point has a lot of auto body shops. If you look at the arrangement here of how they arrange the windshields, I consider that artistic. It's very beautiful. And I also found faith. This is Shelley. Shelley is, I should use the proper pronoun. She is one of the first addicts I met in Hunts Point. I got to be very close in Hunts Point with a group of homeless addicts. I had assumed when I walked into the Bronx, I was effectively agnostic, maybe slightly an atheist. I just assumed if anybody who also shared my views, it was people who had been dealt what I considered the worst cards in life, and yet exactly the opposite. I found deep, immense faith. What's the common thread here? A desire for dignity, a desire to elevate your life above the mundane, desire to have something more than just what is here. But there was also a lot of addiction. This is in a trap house at 2 in the morning. This is an abandoned building. Homeless people are not truly homeless in the sense that they don't have any place to live. They have a temporary place to live. That would change every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks. This particular building was called the Honeycomb Hideout. It was just an empty building they broke into and basically became the home for the street family of addicts for about 2 or 3 weeks. You had to walk up a long 2x4 to get into it. And sex work. I call it prostitution. I'm sorry if that's not the appropriate word, but that's what they call themselves. They actually call themselves. I was yelled at online for using the word prostitute, and so I asked. This is Vanessa. When I asked Vanessa, what do you want to be called? She goes, what I am, a dirty whore. So that's the phrase she uses. This is probably my most famous picture ever taken. This was taken on Christmas Eve. If you know your addiction, you can see her dilated pupils. So she's on a lot of bags of heroin. I keep in contact with Vanessa. She's read Dignity, and she wants me. She's seen some of my talks online, and so Vanessa, if you're listening, I'll tell the audience what you want me to tell them, which is she wants to tell you that she's clean. And she gets very upset when I say that there's been no success stories because she considers herself a success story because she's living in a home with her husband and 2 children. But she was in a very bad way this day. Christmas Eve, it was probably 24 degrees and she had flip-flops. But her sister is a nun. She came to, I found this out, she came to New York City probably in 1988 and has been living on the streets ever since until she got clean 2 years ago. So what did I make of all this? I'm an intellectual, and so I had to come up with a theory of what was going on. And I saw what addiction was, which was a symptom of despair. People said addiction's because there's too many drugs around. I said, nope. It's driven by the demand for drugs. A sense of basically their dignity being denied, a sense of not being appreciated, a sense of being an outcast, a sense of having no place in the universe. And so that's much easier to happen in poor neighborhoods where your art is considered trash, your lifestyle is considered trash, the way you live is considered profane. So I did this for 3 and 4 years in the Bronx, just basically spending almost every day at Hunts Point with the street family, crawling under bridges. And I started thinking about, it really opened up my eyes to how I saw the world. That I had been the person who only looked at the world in numbers, and now I was actually seeing what was behind those numbers. When you see in a spreadsheet only, 100,000 people die of addiction, you don't really, it's just a data point. But when you actually meet them, it becomes much more powerful and much more visceral. And so as a mathematician, I wanted to see if what I learned in the Bronx was true, that there was this despair in the country, this lack of meaning, this loneliness. So I got in my van. I got a Honda Odyssey. I ripped out the back seats, put a little futon in the back, and I drove 400,000 miles around the United States for 4 years, visiting neighborhoods people told me not to visit. One of my gimmicks was I would post online saying I'm going to Buffalo, where should I go? And everybody would say, oh, you got to go see the art gallery. I'd put a big X there. I'm not going there. You know, so I'd eliminate all the places people would tell me to go, and then you would see the neighborhood where people never mentioned to go, and I would go there. This is in Buffalo. You know, this is a largely African-American neighborhood. Used to be Italian, now it's African-American. And people are scared to go out of their homes. You know, I was told not to go there. I spent 2-3 weeks walking around. People treated me just fine. You know, I started seeing that, you know, the U.S. is the most wealthy country, but there's a lot of pain, a lot of people in pain, a lot of people in despair. Just to write, you know, Hunts Point is 15 minutes from Upper East Side. Hunts Point is 15 minutes from the wealthiest neighborhood in the United States. This neighborhood, you know, there's not a lot of fancy neighborhoods in Buffalo, but this neighborhood, you know, is only 10 minutes from the well-to-do parts of town. And what I saw was a lot of similarities to the Bronx. The people might have been different colored. The landscape might have been different, you know, but I saw the same amount of despair, same amount of pain, same amount of drug use. You know, this picture is in Portsmouth, Ohio. Portsmouth, Ohio is 99.9% white. It's rural. It is very, very similar to Hunts Point. And so I saw so many similarities between the two. I saw drugs replacing hope. When hope leaves, drugs fill, you know, nature hates a vacuum. When hope is gone, drugs come in. I saw deep loneliness, physical and metaphysical, meaning not just not having things in this world. Plenty of people, we're the wealthiest country. Every one of us has a lot of things. So why are we unhappy? Because we need something, we need a place more than just in this universe. We need to think that we have a greater purpose in life. This is Beauty. I believe she's in the book. Beauty was brought to Hunts Point by a pimp when she was 16. She's from Oklahoma City. She is one of the most impulsive people I met, but also one of the smartest people I met. She's verbally, I just want to, like, I wish I had audio recording of some of her rants. They're just like, they're works of art. This girl can talk. I drove Beauty back to Hunts. You can Google online. There's a story by me about, if you Google my name and then Beauty, I write about how I drove her back to Oklahoma. I gave everybody in Hunts Point a verbal promise. I said, if you ever want to leave, you don't have, I'll take you wherever you want to go. If it's safe, where you want to go safe. So I remember, like, around this time, like in 2012 or so, this time of year, she goes, one of the things I would help people with is using my computer. They'd sit on my computer and use Facebook and look at their ad. And she, you know, she was looking at her mother, who had just been released from jail. She was born in jail. Beauty was born in jail. Her mother was in jail when Beauty was born. Her mother was now sober, had her 3-year chip, and Beauty says, I want to go back and see my mom. I said, okay, well, you know, that sounds a little bit impulsive. Think about it. I said, but I tell you what, on the day after Christmas, be here at the McDonald's. And if you're here, I'll drive you to Oklahoma City. You know, but I cleared it with her mother first. You know, I didn't think about it actually until the day after Christmas. I said, oh, I think I'll go see Beauty. I didn't expect her to be. She was there with her bags. I called her mother to make sure it was all copacetic. And so I drove her to Oklahoma City. That was a road trip. She gets there, and then she had some outstanding charges in Oklahoma City for past prostitution. And when she got to Oklahoma City, she decided that she wanted to set things right, so she turned herself in on these old charges. And then a week later, New York City detectives flew in and took her back to New York City because she was running from a felony in New York. So, but why all the similarities? For me, the similarities were that why was Portsmouth so much like the Bronx? And I started thinking that the reason is what they shared was both groups were largely what I call back row, which is they didn't have a lot of education. They didn't have fancy college degrees. They were just working people trying to work. And so my thesis was that was the biggest divide in the U.S. That was my postulate, that the biggest divide in the U.S. is education. That is, it's not race, race is a big issue. Don't get me wrong, I'm not denying the importance of race, but that a Republican bond trader has more in common with a Democratic professor of sociology at Princeton than they do with a kid flipping hamburgers in Buffalo. I think that, I'll try to explain a little bit in the next few slides, but that's our biggest difference. And what I mean by that is how we see the world, how you view the world. Not what you wear, not what music you listen to, but how you view your place in the world and what your role in the world is. I will like to say that, can anybody guess the name of this guy? That's Jesus Christ. He actually has changed his name to Jesus Christ. He has the driver's license, Jesus Christ. So when he introduced himself as Jesus, he has great fashion. You can find great fashion in McDonald's. So as I say, that we are a country divided by meaning. This is in El Paso, and this is probably my second most famous picture. This picture is from Evangelical Church in Prestonburg, I think, Kentucky. So, again, how we view our place in the world is determined by our education. I'll go through this really quick. If you read the book, you know about the difference between front row and back row. Front row is basically, another simple way is you're built around your career. You'll do anything to build your career, to build your resume. The thing I want to, there's this meme about, turtles down, like you did the deeper turtle. The deepest turtle is the last bullet point that, if you're into philosophy, it's a very materialistic way of viewing the world. You're here now, and that's what you're going to maximize. Your role is to do the best you can. There's nothing after this. This is all there is. And you'll do anything. It's a view without a lot of spirituality, a lot of transcendence. You want to build a career. You'll leave your family. You'll leave your hometown. You'll leave your country. You'll leave your faith to become to get more money. The back row, I don't mean this in a negative way. This is not. I don't pass judgment on either group. In general, the demographic of the back row is much more similar to a community college than it is to Princeton. People who go to trade school, people who don't leave, who don't do any education after high school, drop out of high school. But how you see the world is through your community, is through your family, is through your network, is through your faith, and the important turtle down is it's an understanding, it's at some level a humble worldview. It's an understanding that we can't solve everything, that the world, that the universe offers us questions that we can't answer. And I don't like to talk about politics, but the larger political issue is that we're all living in a front row world. They're the ones who make policy. That's the ones who create the sense of what is right and what is wrong. So I always tell this story, and I believe it's in the book, of there was a young girl I met, and I always remember, she's the age of a lot of you students here. She was in East Out. I go to McDonald's a lot, as you know from my book. And when I'm traveling on the road, I spend my nights in McDonald's just typing up my notes. And there was this woman in East LA, Mexican-American woman, 22, 21. She reminded me a lot of my daughters, and she would come every night with her Switch and her a laptop. And I knew exactly why she was there. She was there because she didn't have internet at home. And so this is where she would come to do her homework, play her video games. And so we, over 3 nights, we started talking, because I was there too, typing my notes. And she had opportunities, educational opportunities, beyond what she was doing. She was going to East LA Community College, and that's not a rap. What I'm about to say is not a rap on, that's a perfectly fine thing for her to do. But she could have gone out of state to go to a quote, fancier school, and she didn't. And I said to her, why? Why didn't you leave the state? And she says, I can't. I'm my mother's translator. So if you know immigrant families, her mother doesn't speak English. She's the oldest of 5 kids, and she effectively is the person who takes care of all the logistics for the family. She's the one who she couldn't leave her mother. Now, when I say the front row wins, what I mean by that is I think that's the right decision on her part. I think a lot of people would tell her, a lot of guidance counselors would tell her, no, you need to leave. Go get the better education. Leave your family. Break this tie. And I think that's what I mean by morality. That's generally considered the right decision, the one. And, she has a lot of pressure to do that. I met another kid in Reno, Nevada Community College, who had the same opportunities. He had a basketball scholarship to go out of state. But he couldn't because his mother, single mother, who was in and out of addiction, and his mother was clean when he was around, and when he wasn't around, she wasn't. So he was there to support his mother's, So again, another case where a lot of people look at him saying he made the wrong decision not to go out of state, but he valued family more than he valued his career. And so the victory of the front row isn't just about they're the ones who basically are in D.C. telling us all how we have to live, but it's also it's social. There's something called cultural capital. There's economic capital. There's also cultural capital, like knowing when you feel like you listen to the wrong music. Like to do that is like, why is liking a romance novel, Stephen King novel considered like wrong? You should be watching the New York Times New York Times approved books. So there's a lot of what is right and what is wrong that's set by the intellectuals. So what we determine tasteful versus non-tasteful. I happen to think this is a beautiful photograph. I think this is a beautiful Walmart. But, it's Walmart, so it's got to be bad. So, which gets me to the McDonald's. I always said that, a lot of my well-educated friends in New York would eat bugs over eating McDonald's. And, when I said that online, people made fun of me. And then, like two weeks later, came a review in the New York Times food section for some Swedish chef who had a course of 12 courses of bugs. You don't eat McDonald's if you're wealthy. Only you take your kids there. McDonald's is evil. All the reasons, blah 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 blah. That's not how most people see McDonald's. So this is like an example of someone who thinks McDonald's. This guy is a relatively famous online pundit, and anybody who eats at McDonald's is a bad person. But if you have any clue about McDonald's and you've been in them, you know that's not how the world sees McDonald's. This couple is in Houston. They're getting married. They're celebrating their wedding at McDonald's. I mean, they don't have a lot of money. They're both very busy. Young Mexican-American couple in Houston, outside of Houston, and they asked me to take their picture. And they wanted me to take their picture in the kids' play area because, they wanted to have children. They wanted to remember the day. So I was their wedding photographer. And it's also where people get together. You know, there are old men groups. This is somewhere in Mississippi, I believe. You find these everywhere. This is in Ohio somewhere. And this is the cover photo of my book. This is actually in Huntington, West Virginia. So you don't have to get, you do not need photography class out there. The U.S. has a very expansive view of free speech in the sense of you do not need to get someone's approval to take their pictures. I always ask for it, but you do not need that. If you look at my pictures, it's almost always people looking at the camera, which is me acknowledging that they approve this picture. And I let everybody, and you won't be surprised to find this out, I let everybody look at my pictures in my camera and delete the ones they don't like. They've deleted some really wonderful pictures. I let them go into the bathroom and clean up if they want to. So I think that's the right thing to do. But so I don't get signed releases from any pictures. You don't need it, and you can understand that the demographic I'm taking pictures of is kind of hard to get. So my publisher said, we want this on the front. The only time you need a signed release is if it's used for marketing. So I had to get a signed release from these two. I'm like, this is a needle in a haystack. This was 3 years ago in Huntington, West Virginia. You know, this is one night in a McDonald's. And they really, really wanted it. So I went to Huntington, West Virginia. I drove there, and I spent 3 days walking around Huntington, West Virginia, going through homeless camps. I can tell you where the gay hookup spots in Huntington, West Virginia, because that's what people thought I was looking for. I eventually found them. I got their approval. I gave them each $1,000, and I exchanged Christmas cards with the woman on the right. Still, but it was a hard. I still am amazed I found them. She also wants to say, by the way, that they're not a couple; they're just friends. And so you see everything in McDonald's. What I saw, this is going back to the importance of faith, I saw this is a very common, this is in Gary, Indiana, I believe. This is a very common scene. People reading the Bible in McDonald's. Playing chess or checkers. Reading the Bible again. This is in Bristol, Tennessee. This is a soccer team from Lewiston, Maine. There's a whole feel-good. I think they made a movie about this. Disney made a movie about the Somalis. The Haitian thing is very big in the news right now, but a similar story happened in Lewiston. Lewiston was 99.9% white until 1998, and when a bunch of Somalis came. Some were placed there, others self-immigrated from Atlanta, actually, where they were placed. And there was a lot of stress in the town, but eventually the soccer team won the state championship, and so the Disney's making a feel-good movie about that. I briefly thought of labeling my book. You can learn anything you want to learn about America. You can learn it in McDonald's, which I think is really true. If you want to understand, I tell foreigners who travel to America, don't go to Manhattan. I mean, you can do that. Go see the Statue of Liberty. Go do that. But just spend a few hours in a McDonald's in Ohio. And so I was a particle physicist. I briefly and this was my graduate level textbook in gravitation. It's based on Einstein's general relativity. And one day in Cleveland, I found this gentleman reading. And I have this book on my shelf. And I mostly use it as a doorstop, but it's still there. So you really, you can learn everything you want in McDonald's, including Einstein's theory of general relativity. So what did I learn, and how did I change over these 10 years of doing this? And what is the primary lesson of McDonald's? The primary lesson of McDonald's is community really matters. Think about what McDonald's is. I'm not sure younger kids understand it. McDonald's was, the whole point is, think about fast food. You go in, you get your food, you leave. That was the whole understanding of McDonald's. If you're my age, you don't sit, it's a non-sit-down restaurant. You go and they're social spaces. Why are they social spaces? Because people like to be social. You know? People need community. It's core to what we are as a species. We are a social species. We can't be alone. Being alone makes no sense. So what I said, like this is my little political lesson, which is, the front row has made a world in which all that matters is profits. All that matters is, just get your food as quickly as possible and, make as much money, and then they don't use it. Nobody in Manhattan, except for the working class, and there are a lot of working class people in New York. There's a lot of Black, Hispanic, working class people in New York, as I say in the Bronx. They use McDonald's, but the wealthy people, who write for the New York Times, they do not use McDonald's. But the large hedge funds and that buy up local businesses and replace them with McDonald's do not use McDonald's. They go to fancy restaurants where you sit down. So there is a political lesson here, but there's, I think, a lot more a sociological lesson here is, in all of this, that the front row has won. The educated elite has won. They have set the terms of the debate, what is a valid way to live? What's a meaningful way to live? You're supposed to go to get as much education as possible. And by the way, you should do that. Get as much education as possible. And you're supposed to give up all your forms of community. Faith is dumb. Staying in the same place is backwards and provincial. Family is just a weird thing. Like, we should move beyond family. No, we shouldn't. So what I say is, they view success, the metric of success is how big your resume is. What they ignore is what I call non-credential forms of meaning. What I mean by that? There are things that give you a sense of place that you're gifted to at birth, family, hometown, or that don't require a resume. Faith. This is an all-Black congregation in Portsmouth, Ohio. This is not Portsmouth. This is somewhere in where is this? I don't remember. Right near Pittsburgh. In any case, I went to a lot of all-Black church services, and I was always welcomed. They don't care what you look like. They don't care how much money you have. They don't care your past. If you're there to pray, they'll accept you. It's a community that accepts you for who you are, that you don't need to show them a resume to get in. Things that accept you as you are. Oh, by the way, this is South Carolina. Yeah. I think this is somewhere in the Black Belt. I don't know. Like family, nation. We're all a member of the nation, and people take pride in that. Hometown, and faith. Things that are gifted to you at birth. again, each one of these things, what I call the front row, wants to make you feel guilty about, or have made harder to believe. You know, we're supposed to move beyond all these things. This is Danville, Virginia. That's the mill town. I'm sorry, we're talking about well, that was a mill town. That was a mill that was closed. That destroyed the town. That moved to Mexico, and then basically the town spiraled. So, again, my advice to you students is there's nothing wrong with getting an elite education. There's nothing wrong with the education I did. I would never tell anybody to do that. But there's other things out there in the world that are important. Again, it's not everybody needs one. Trade schools are great. Getting a skill is great. Finding a source of pride other than just education is great. What everybody does need, and this is something that I can't believe needs to be said and we forget, everybody needs a community that provides them a place in the universe. They need to know that they're valued. Again, I was speaking to someone last night who's a professor of philosophy about, I read a lot of ancient Greek philosophy, Plato, Aristotle. They would not understand, they don't understand the idea of a human separate from a community. There is no idea of a single individual. We're part of a community. People need that. So I'll skip over this real quick because this is kind of my egg-headed thing, but I say basically, everybody needs to know their address in the universe of meaning. They need to know where they fit in. The old system was very simple. You're defined by your community, your family, your faith, your place, your nation. It was like 5 or 6 things, you know. Your clan and your race, there's that. But it was very much simple. It was very, you could easily understand where you fit in this world. The new system, which tells you that be your true self, basically asks you to emancipate yourself from any group. Find your color, your parachute. Be crazy. Individualism is the highest form of achievement in the front row. You're supposed to look at anything, any community, as something that's holding you back from being the true you. But when you think about that, including breaking roles of gender, breaking roles of family, breaking roles of faith, breaking roles of nation, you're supposed to move beyond all that and define yourself. Define you, a singular you. You come up with what I call a bespoke address. What you're basically doing is, by definition, creating a community of one. Because no one can understand you. You're supposed to break every bond. This, by the way, is in El Paso. Just to let you know, as an aside. There is a border wall. There has been for the last 30 years that goes right through. El Paso is my favorite town in the United States, probably. The other side of the fence is Mexico, this gentleman has an interesting tattoo. So we've untethered everyone to create communities of one, which by definition is lonely. To me, it's not surprising we have an epidemic of loneliness. We're telling people that's what you're supposed to want to achieve. You're supposed to want to achieve an individuality that emancipates you from any obligations of the past. I mean, we're creating lonely people by almost by definition. And it rarely includes anything spiritual. And it doesn't have to be, there's spirituality in the beauty of nature. there's spirituality. We have a very utilitarian, a very like, does it work or doesn't it work approach to life. We don't, if you tell somebody, if you build a house that has like, if you tell somebody you're going out for a walk, why through nature, like why? You have to have a point. Like no, I just like to exist in nature. I just want to walk. And people look at you kind of odd, but like, what's your goal here? Like, I have no goal. My goal is just to exist surrounded by nature. That's my goal. We expect everybody to have a goal out of everything, as opposed to any sense of just saying, existing itself. I want to be existing in the spiritual, the beauty of nature. I just got back from, as an aside, I just got back from the Faroe Islands, which is this group of 18 islands between Iceland and Norway. It's in the middle of nowhere, 60,000 people, and it has a lot of gorgeous nature. And when I got there, I went there without doing any research. Everybody else on my plane had a checklist of all these places they had to visit. And I just got there, and they have a great bus system despite having 18 islands over 500 square miles, so you can actually get anywhere between the two. I just spent my 2 weeks just randomly choosing a bus, going to the end of the line, and walking. And people kept asking me, like, why? Like, did you see blank? I remember I was out on one walk. It was like an 8-mile walk in the middle of nowhere. And I come upon what's considered a scenic spot on Google Maps. And this car approaches me. These 4 people jump out with their new hiking gear that they clearly had bought for this trip. Come out, snap pictures, snap selfies with each other, jump back in the car and leave. And I'm like, what? I guess you saw the nature. But like, and people would ask me in the bars at night, like, have you saw a blank and blank? Like, no, I just walked. I think that's still, I don't understand the point of going around and just going to a scenic spot. Like, why? So, and again, that's a striking and materialistic world. You have to get something out of everything you do, something that you can explain to people as having made you a better person, I guess, as opposed to just existing. Which, again, if you strip the spiritual and the magical out of life, and you tell everybody that they should by definition become as weird as possible so that they have no friends or no community, that's a pretty lonely world. So this is there are some pretty funny church signs. This isn't one of them. I've seen some pretty cringe church signs. But, I almost wanted this to be the cover of my book, which was, this to me is the bumper sticker lesson from all my work is everyone wants to feel a valued member of something bigger than themselves. Like, I don't really believe in polls and statistical methods to try to find when people are happy, but since it supports mine, I'll use it. Generally, people are happy when the happiest, when they are excelling at something in a group. When they're, like if you're on a team and you're doing well for your team. You're the star quarterback. For your team. Everybody needs to feel a valued member of something bigger than themselves. And again, the bigger than themselves is very, very important. It has to transcend this world. So this is in Lewiston. So the take-home lessons, and wrap this up and answer questions. I think it's sometimes hard for, it would be hard for my 24-year-old self to understand what do I mean by the concept of the self. But, again, one thing I always say is a very simple analogy for it is, what do people want written on their tombstone? Like, he was a good father, I mean, do people want to say, like, he had a really good resume? They want to say, like, what they want, what image of themselves they want to last beyond this world. This slide is generally aimed for when I give my talk at places like Princeton and Harvard. For those students in here who will go on to higher education and leave your past, that's fine. I did that. I would never tell a student not to do that. But never forget where you came from. And basically, people need to be a member of a community. And that's that. Oh. So I'm going to try to find a better slide to leave it on. Anybody have a favorite one? I'll leave it on that one. So I would like to ask anybody to ask any questions. I know the photography class is here, and one of the things I wanted to do was talk a little bit about photography a little bit. Oh. So I brought my cameras just to show you. This is my camera I took a lot of these pictures with. It's a simple Canon. I shoot on manual mode. My lesson if you want to learn photography, my lesson is the only way to learn to photograph is to learn what the aperture and f-stop is and what they really mean. And for that, I shoot on manual mode. On the side, this thing here, I carried this. This is how I basically walked in the Bronx, like this. I went to drug houses like this. This is if you know cameras, this is probably $4,000. Nobody tried to steal it from me. One of the gimmicks I used to build people's trust was if I was with a homeless person in McDonald's or with a drug dealer, in my car or on the street, I'd say, "Hey, can you hold this for a second? I have to go use the bathroom, or I have to get something from my car." So here's $5,000. I trust you with it. No one ever stole it. It was always there when it came back. But that was a way. I'm not necessarily encouraging you to do that. But I got smart enough to know who. And many times people were so overwhelmed that like someone would trust them, like you trust me, that it's a way to get people to trust you, that you're willing to trust them. This is what I shoot with now, which is a little pocket camera. And the reason I shoot with this is because you can keep it in your back pocket. Not surprisingly, this intimidates a lot of people. So when you're talking with somebody, this kind of scares them, and people change their behavior if you have this, which is why I didn't do video either. The minute a video camera comes out in a drug trap, that's yo bitch, that's going on YouTube. Get out of here. So that's the only time anybody gets concerned. So I think one of the things about approaching people and getting their portraits is not to intimidate them and try to make them feel as comfortable as possible. And that often means I rarely ask people if I could take their picture. That was usually the last thing I asked. There's a lot of people I spoke to I didn't take the picture. I think it should come natural. I don't like the diving in, taking the picture, and then leaving. And again, I let people delete their photos. I think there's some ethical questions to that, and I have no problem being on the side of we all control our image. A homeless person should be able to control their image as well. They should be able to delete pictures if they don't like it. They should be able to go into the bathroom and clean themselves up. And every woman goes and puts on makeup. Every woman goes. I don't care if that person is living in their own filth on the street. They go in the bathroom and clean up. So, yes. Sorry? I have not. I intended to come early yesterday and do that, but then the traffic was bad. Okay. Yes. Sorry? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Talking loud enough? So anyway, I think I forgot the plot.
You talk about Smurf.
Oh, yeah.
You want to talk
Obviously,
offline?
she made me cry.
Okay.
She didn't make me cry. It wasn't the writing that made me cry. You were able to capture her essence, okay? When she said, when you asked her the obvious question, I don't want to ruin the book, okay? So when you asked her the obvious question, you want me to just do it? All right. I'm sorry. Where is it, buddy? There's a good picture of her. You know, this book is 280-some pages long, okay? However, there are 41 double-page spreads. And if you don't know what a double-page spread is, it's pictures, okay? So there's 82 pictures. There's 82 pages of nothing but pictures. So you're already down to only about 200 pages, okay? And it's double-spaced, okay? And there's pictures on a lot of other pages. So it's not really a 200-page book, okay? It can be done. It can be done in like a long day if you really had to do it. And I encourage you to do it because in my view, if you had experiences similar to mine, you may identify with one of the people. They're not characters, they're people.
For you, it was Smurf.
For me, I identified with Smurf because it was at that point that it occurred to me, and this is just my opinion,
Right.
and it's not any more valuable than any of your opinions, but in my opinion, many of these people at some point never learned what a goal, a life goal was. And many parents try to instill goals in their kids. Oh, you're going to finish kindergarten. Oh, let's do this. What do you want to do? Oh, you want to bake a cake. That's a goal. Baking a cake is a goal. It teaches you how to learn to read. It teaches you math, etc. And I think it's very important, in my view, that had I not had a goal, I saw myself as being Smurf. I lived in Palmdale. Bakersfield was our closest McDonald's. Okay? That's about an hour.
Probably the biggest change. You know, again, I don't try not to get into politics, but the biggest change, or the thing that I get most irritated by politically, you mentioned family there. If you do the work I do, you cannot come away not understanding the importance of family. Now, whenever I say that, people like, single mothers are beautiful. Look, I'm not. Two functional parents are better than one. Okay, I'm not dissing single mothers. They're in tough situations, and for those of you who are a single mother or come from a single mother, they're in a tough situation. They don't need to, they shouldn't be in that tough situation. And, you know, I don't remember particularly the details of Smurf, but I can tell you that almost everybody in this book has a bad family situation or a family situation, which, you know, kids are being misserved if they don't have two functional adults helping them. And so one of the things that gets frustrating to me is when I see people talking about, look, I don't want to deny you know, the dignity of a single mother. I'm just saying it's extraordinarily hard to be a single mother, and I think we should try to encourage families.
And this had nothing to do with her single parenthood.
Right.
In my view, she was doing the very best she could, and her rationale, this is my family, this is all I have.
Yep.
That was a declaration, and that's why I started crying, because it made me reflect on my own experience. And I was in the exact same situation that young lady was in at some point. And had I not had the goal of going to Kent State University, which I didn't do when I was in her situation, but it was still a goal that I had since I was 10 years old.
Let's talk afterwards. Okay. I would like to talk to you more afterwards.
I just think that it's a way to get you out of your funk.
Right.
A lot of people get into that funk.
Thank you.
Hey, quick question. I noticed when you talked about front row people, you said credentials, academic degrees. And one thing I noticed that when they introduced you here, the first thing they mentioned was your PhD in physics and that you were a Wall Street trader. I understand that's part of your past life, but right now, where do you find community and where do you find meaning and the stuff that you were talking about from the people in the back row?
You know, so first of all, I never deny I'm front row. And one of the things I would say, if I don't go into these neighborhoods and try to cosplay as a working class kid. You know, I go into McDonald's and I proudly, when people ask me what I do, what I'm reading. I'm reading Plato. Like, I don't try to pretend to, like, I don't have highfalutin taste. And I think people are very, if you're honest with people, they're like, okay, you're you're a little bit weird. Yeah, you know, people can roll with that. Which gets me to the point is, I actually think someone like me is a weirdo. Okay, I think we're the minority. I'm in a minority, and I think it's important for intellectuals to remember that, which is, you know, so I don't have a lot of forms of community. As I write in my book at the end, I fled my town. I think that was the right decision for me. So I wish for me, it's faith right now. I've gone back to the church as the answer. But even that's hard for me because as a scientist, it's very hard to accept that, you know, I don't have all the answers, to not be the well-actually guy. But I think what's most important is to remind myself all the time that I'm the weirdo in the room, you know, which is fine, you know, but, you know, not to try to put my kind of utility function on the rest of the world and realize that it doesn't work for my lifestyle doesn't work for the majority of people.
Hi, I'm a faculty member here at the college. So the thing that I think that I kept thinking about as I read your book, and by the way, it was amazing, and thank you for writing it and doing all literally, figuratively, the legwork, was the fact that, you know, education, so I grew up on the back row, but I had community and family, and I was lucky in that regard. And I still consider myself to be the back row, even though I have a college education and teach in this setting. One of the reasons why I chose a community college setting was because we do have open access. And the requirements to become a student here are fairly easy if that's your desire. And we even help, through counseling and whatnot for students to have access to the services they need. That's a big part of the community college family. But so with all that said, one would think that we would be building after building here on this campus because we would run out of ways to accommodate students. So I feel like somewhere the safety net hasn't been put into place. And so when I deconstruct, and I'm just curious, like for you hearing the stories and deconstructing those back to the beginning, I hear you saying that family is often what was lacking, that family, familiar support, or that community. But so that happens, and maybe we can't do anything about that, but what would be like that next? And I know you didn't write this book for the purpose of solving all these community problems, but what are the safety nets? What are we missing? Because our doors should be busting open here.
I think, I think, again, a lot of kids have, I'm thinking about Portsmouth in particular, they're bored. A lot of people get in drugs out of boredom. They don't have anything to occupy them, and so which is why I'm partially like a lot of people make fun of gamers. I have no problem with people playing video games. Like I think it's a way for it's a healthy, whether it's a community or not, but it's a healthy way to be occupied and not being In Portsmouth, a lot of people shoot up drugs in the. They're so bored they walk around the cemetery and shoot up drugs. And you need to provide some alternative community. So sports teams are great. I think men need that particularly. Young men need an outlet for their energy. I actually think after school work. I apparently I don't know if people do that anymore. I was working after school after the age of 6th grade. I was a dishwasher, painted houses and all that. So I don't know. But I think it's important just to be engaged, to keep busy, because, I don't want to keep harping on faith, but I think, sound like a born again, but like I think, churches are fantastic. Raising a child in a community is a great way to give them a sense of place and a sense of respect. I think if you look at the long arc, it's kind of basically moving away from being a math nerd to basically trying to be a people nerd. I really don't have time now for arguments that people give me data. Like, people say, well, you look at polls of this and that. It's like, so I think I try to be a lot more less macro and more micro and just kind of focusing on the small. But I think the faith is a big one. Like that's probably, again, I was never kind of an angry atheist who went on chat forums and told religious people they're idiots. But I wasn't far from that. And so, to make that big switch and to see that, that, and I still follow science pretty closely, I actually used to work on cosmology. I don't know if you know what cosmology is. It's the students out there. It's a study of how the universe began. So have you heard of the Big Bang? So I understand about as well as a person can understand the kind of modern scientific belief in the creation of the universe, the Big Bang. I use this. My kind of quip now that it's just basically it's Genesis dressed up in math. it still doesn't answer the big questions. It just kind of tells you some details. So I still respect science a lot. You know, science is fantastic at building bridges. It's not necessarily good at building meaningful lives. And that understanding that, you know, that's the most important question, not the question of like how the universe got here, but why, like, you know, what to do once here. Yes.
That in the end, it's all about family, connections, love. That in the end, that's all that's really going to matter. And for the ones who are deeply rooted in science and connect everything to the atoms banging together, and you know, we're here because and take it back to science. God created science. Okay, there's more to it than that. So I just want to say that you are very compassionate. And I appreciate everything that you have said. And it, like I said, it's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very glad you came.
If one day I will write a book, I don't have time to sit here and talk about my life because it'd take months on end. But one day when I write my book, I hope you read it.
I will.
And remember, my name is Carla, and yes,
Well,
I look forward to sharing my testimony with as many people as I can.
I would love to read your book, Carla.
So
I hope you write it.
I'm going to. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just curious on a practical level, where do you park? What do you order at McDonald's?
I'm a dollar menu guy. Like, I mean, you know, one of the things that, excuse my language here, I apologize, I'm going to say it, but like, one of the things is like, especially Shelly, she was like, sometimes I would buy her McDonald's and she would start ordering all these things. I said, girl, don't take me deep. Like, I'm not even paying. I'm buying what's ever on the dollar menu. But usually it's just a latte every morning. And when I do eat the food, I just get the double hamburger. That's it. And by the way, if you order McDonald's and don't have the app, you're an idiot. Like they are throwing money at you now. The deals they are throwing at you are just amazing. So you get the app. Even the old people who don't know what apps are.
Chris, thank you very much. Just give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming to our college, and believe it or not, I think I have the app on here. I actually do.
How many points do you have?
Oh, not many, but I occasionally do drift into McDonald's when going through a drive-through. Anyway, thank you very much for making the trip to come to speak to us. We've enjoyed your book, and everyone, I think Chris will be around for a little bit, and you may be able to speak to him one-on-one if you get a chance.
Yeah, I'll stay around. I'll be over there. So it was an honor to be here, and thank you so much for having me. And thank you for reading it.